Hey friends, Kenny Ortiz here. Another video related to the class I teach at Bethany Global University, gender and sexuality. In this video, I'm going to answer the question, what is pederasty? And then I'll comment on why that's relevant. Pederasty, simply spoken, or simply said, is the action or practice of an older man having sex with a young boy. That's pretty much it. But it's not just pedophilia. It's a little more than that. It's a relationship where it's ongoing. This was extremely popular in ancient Greece. It seemed to develop right around the 7th century BC, so 700 years before Jesus comes on the scene. This is coming into play, and then it gets very popular. And by the time the 1st century rolls around, there's a variation of pederasty that's very prevalent amongst rich Romans, both in the city of Rome as well as in ancient Greek city-states and beyond. Many prominent Greek scholars and philosophers were known to have boy lovers. And in fact, there are some parts of the Roman Empire and ancient Greek city-states where you couldn't actually enter into the military unless you had been the boy lover of an older man who was in the military. That was kind of your meal ticket into the military. And the idea of pederasty in Greek culture, and then later in the Roman culture, was the idea that, or the ideology was, well, this is not a man, so it's not considered, it shouldn't be considered inappropriate. And it was idealized by a lot of people. It was typically only the rich ruling class, the Roman aristocrats. They are the ones that typically had the ability to do this, and they typically would take boys from the poorer, lower class. That was normal, and they would mentor these boys. Now, there may be some element of the relationship that was actually valuable, like there was actual mentorship in teaching these young boys how to be a man. But if it was just that, it would have been great. Unfortunately, it wasn't just that. It went way beyond that. It went into this practice that was absolutely disgusting, a form of abuse and exploitation. This is sin. This is vile, where tons of young boys, before they hit puberty, by the way, it was always a boy before puberty with an older man. So a man in his 30s, 40s, or 50s, or even older, having sex with boys that are, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years old, having a sexual ongoing relationship where they were mentoring these boys. And as they got older, then they would get new ones. And this was a common practice. And so some people look at this and say this is wrong because it was the oppression of the higher class on the lower class, or the rich on the poor. Obviously, many people look at this just saying this is wrong on its face. This is abuse. This is exploitation. This is disgusting rape of young boys. Now, there were a lot of people in ancient Greece that were against this. So it wasn't idealized and endorsed by everyone. It was criticized by people as well for hundreds of years. But as the practice got more and more popular beyond just the Greeks and into broader Roman culture, it became more and more endorsed by more people. Again, it was typically the guys at the top, the aristocrats, the affluent, powerful class. They were the ones typically doing this, typically to poorer young boys of a younger class. So that's pederasty. Why this is important in terms of a theological conversation is that there are certain people in our society today who claim to be Christians, who claim to believe the Bible, and when they read the Bible, the parts of the New Testament that I believe are clearly condemning same-sex relationships, clearly condemning a man with a man or a woman with a woman, they come along and say, no, it's not condemning all homosexual activity or all same-sex relations. It's only condemning same-sex relations between an older man and a young boy. Well, of course that's wrong. And a lot of people who have liberation theology or kind of neo-orthodox theology, they basically look at the Bible through the lens of the oppressed versus the poor. Like the primary purpose of the Bible is for God to overthrow the oppressed peoples. And so if you are in power, you're always the sinful class. You're always in the wrong. And this is an ideology that exists. Even today, it still exists pretty prominently amongst people who have liberal theology and liberal politics. Being powerful, being rich is bad. You should feel guilty for it. And when you look at the Bible through this lens, you end up twisting it to say, oh, this isn't against homosexuality. This isn't against same-sex relationships. This is just against the oppressive natures of the upper class versus the lower class. Or some people may not take that oppressive perspective. They just say, hey, this is just about child abuse, basically. Now, let me make it clear. I believe the Apostle Paul would have condemned that practice. There's no doubt the Apostle Paul would have thought it was wrong. So there's no doubt that the ancient practice of pederasty and the way it was prevalent and very popular and very pervasive in Roman culture and Greek culture, there's no doubt that Paul would have condemned that. And I believe he does condemn that form of action, because Paul condemns any form of sexual activity outside the bounds of marriage, right? God creates a framework for sexual relations, one man, one woman, in the bounds of covenant for life. Any sexual behavior, any sexual activity or relations outside of that ideal design is inappropriate. It's harmful. It's outside of how God designed us to function, and it is sinful. Clearly, pederasty is in the category of sinful. So clearly the Bible would condemn that. However, the Bible also condemns all form of same-sex relationships, right? There's a lot of people today that want to make homosexuality be okay. Sometimes they just feel guilty. Sometimes they have just compassion for people who are wrestling through same-gender attraction or same-sex attraction. They're wrestling through that, and so they want to be compassionate and go, come on, we want to love these people. We can't tell them it's wrong or sinful. Sometimes people have twisted the scripture or misunderstood the scripture, and therefore that's led them to a misunderstanding, a bad hermeneutic, or it's led them to want to see something in the Bible that's not actually there, or has led them to be blinded to something that is in the Bible, and they're pretending like it's not there. In this case, they're pretending like the Bible does not condemn all same-sex actions. So a lot of people say, no, the Bible condemns pederasty. It doesn't condemn consensual, monogamous, same-sex relationships. If two dudes love each other and they're faithful to each other, they're not sleeping around, and they're monogamous with one another, well, that's not sinful. That's not inappropriate, right? That's not what the Bible is condemning. So this is extremely important to the conversation around what is homosexuality is sinful or not, because there are many people, liberal theologians in our society, who are coming in and saying, anytime the Bible looks like it's condemning homosexuality, it's actually condemning the dirty old men, or those abusive old men, those Roman aristocrats. It's not condemning all homosexuality or all same-sex relationships, just pederasty. I clearly disagree with that. I clearly think the Bible does not teach that. The long-standing belief amongst Christians and Bible believers for nearly 2,000 years has believed that the Bible does condemn all same-sex relationships and sexual relations, all same-sex sexual relations of any kind, not just pederasty, but beyond that as well. Hope this is helpful. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me, shoot me a text or an email, or leave a comment here. I'd be glad to connect with you.